Apple enters the AI game with new tools for end users, but will it move the discussion to new areas, or are they just playing catch up? We'll chat about all of these AI announcements that Apple made during its WWDC keynote on this episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Joining me on the show today to talk about Apple's AI are Ken Mingus. He is the executive editor of Computer World, and Mike Simon, executive editor of Macworld. Hello, gentlemen.
How you doing?
Hey, Keith.
We've also got Chris in the back. He might jump in as well. So, hello, Chris.
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. All right. So
I'm hoping for a few jaded comments from Chris along the way. He weighs in.
Chris has told me that he might be the hater on this one, so we'll be ready for.
I do not expect Chris to be running out to buy an Apple device this year just because of yesterday's announcement.
We've already discussed the Mingus effect, by the way, which is the ability to basically buy a new phone every year.
You mean that's why the stock is up today? Apple stock is up?
The Mingus doctrine is actually you've now moved from an effect to a doctrine, Ken.
Okay.
All right, so let's jump right into it. At its annual developers conference, Apple announced a range of new AI features, including an overhaul of its voice assistant Siri, integration with OpenAI's ChatGPT, several writing assistance tools, and new customizable emojis. Woo! Calling these tools Apple Intelligence, the company also pitched these features as personal intelligence, going after end users or the average user. I looked back at our the previous episode we did about when is Apple going to get into AI was episode 20. And now we are on episode 160 of this podcast. So 140 episodes ago, we were discussing this. And this was in February of 2023. And so we finally got a lot of the things that we were discussing in that episode, especially with Siri. So Ken and Mike, out of the list of all of the AI announcements that were made, what stood out to you as either the most interesting, the most surprising, the most useful when it comes out in the fall? Ken, I'll start with you.
Okay. I was just going to say which one you want to go first.
Yeah.
Most interesting, or the thing that really caught my eye right off the bat, was the feature that's going to be rolled into Mail that allows for your emails to be checked, by Apple Intelligence, and then you can set a tone. So if you fire off some nasty email at your boss about how they're working you too hard or something like that, you can click professional tone, and it will tone it down. So not that I fire off angry emails to my boss all the time. I want to be clear, but I thought that was a really cool way of using the Apple Intelligence in a way that users could relate to. So that was the thing that I thought was cool. I'll go real quick. I thought the private cloud compute, that whole infrastructure around cloud computing and how you're offloading some of these some of these queries and things to the cloud, and Apple's building up this entire infrastructure to keep it private. I thought that was noteworthy. And then the other thing, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about this, I'm sure, is the much overdue, much needed improvements to Siri.
Okay.
Which, so we can talk about that. So that's my big three.
All right, those are your big three. Mike, what about you? What stood out to you?
I don't have anything left. All that's left is the image stuff. But all right, so real quick, Apple Intelligence is like the corniest, most brilliant marketing term Apple has ever come up with.
It is. It's true.
Because you can reduce it to AI. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes the AI word that is everywhere, buzzy, and everyone knows, and applies it to itself. The whole Apple Intelligence demonstration yesterday was just prototypical Apple. They arrived late to the party, but they bring the best snacks. Everything that we saw yesterday has been done before.
Right.
The image stuff, the email stuff, the text stuff, obviously the voice, the Siri stuff. It's all been done piecemeal. This company's doing this app does that, this service does that, this device does that. They're bringing it all together onto the three devices that matter most to them, iPhone, Mac, and iPad first. And I have no doubt over the course of the rest of 2024 and 2025, Apple Watch, HomePod, TV, Apple TV as well. This is going to be the foundation of like the next era for Apple leading up to, at some point, Vision Pro.
Yeah, and we'll get to the Vision Pro stuff as well in this discussion. But Ken, I'm surprised that the writing assistant really stood out for you, because for me it didn't, because I've seen or I've heard about this before, and I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a writer and you're a writer as well, but like you feel like I don't need AI to really help me write an email. And again, your example is great, because it's like maybe in that heat of the moment when you're writing a nasty email to someone, it would be nice to have someone kind of over your shoulder, or an AI over your shoulder. But does that, with this being Apple, does this only work if you're in the Mail app from Apple, or will this work across, is this going to work in my Microsoft Outlook, for example? On my Mac, I'm still on my Mac, but will it work? See, that's what I didn't get from the keynote. I just made the baseline assumption that this would only work within that Apple ecosystem. And again, that's what Apple does, is it wants you to just get everything that they own, so that the integrations then become amazing.
So
Michael?
out of the box, it will work with every Apple app, according to we don't have it yet. It's
Right.
not in the latest. It's not in the first beta. But Apple basically said every app that you type in that they make, it'll work. There's also APIs and developer tools and frameworks that developers can use and incorporate into their apps. Whether your example of Microsoft Outlook, I assume Microsoft will want to do that. When they do it, how quickly they do it, and how much they integrate it is entirely up to the developer of the app, but the tools are there,
Right, and
to incorporate it system-wide.
And again, Microsoft, do they want to do that because they would want you to do their Copilot Outlook thing that they're charging, like, what is it, $20 a month for, or whatever the Copilot seat is?
It's an add-on.
That's and Copilot could also one day be part of Apple Intelligence. So part of the announcement yesterday was the first third-party chatbot, or whatever you want to call it, that's part of this is ChatGPT. So on one hand, it's an admission by Apple that, maybe we're not quite at the level of these other services just yet. And on the other hand, it's saying, this is more open than we usually are. Like generally, Apple develops a feature, releases a feature, and it's us, it's here. They're opening it up to ChatGPT and also other services. They said in the keynote there aren't any yet. I wouldn't be surprised if Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, Meta AI, whatever are the other ones that are out there are all part of this. If not later this year, sometime next.
Yeah.
Yeah, they made a point of saying that they wanted to be sort of open about who they were teaming up with, so that you're not really, and there will be times you'll get to pick, if I understood this correctly, sort of which system or service or platform you want to use. So, down the road when
I assume that's how it's going to work. So right now, what happens is if Apple Intelligence can't answer the question or do the thing, it'll say, hey, do you mind if I send this to ChatGPT instead?
Right, and that's part of the
say
open.
yes or no.
Yeah, that's part of the integration with OpenAI,
Right.
Which it's somewhat brilliant on the part of Apple to do this, because while most of while some of the AI will be done on your device, so whether it's your phone or your Mac, it understands that, like, well, maybe if Siri can't answer the question correctly, we'll offload it to ChatGPT, and then they can be held responsible if it comes up with a goofy ass response. Right.
I mean, maybe,
and then
maybe that's part of it, but I think it's more about
the processing and the privacy.
It's like filling in the blanks,
Yeah.
kind of. So they have a deal with OpenAI. Every single query, before it sends it, it tells you, this is going to be sent to ChatGPT. Do you want us to do that? You can say no.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, they have an agreement with OpenAI where they don't take, see, or store any of the data that's sent.
Right.
So it's still private. I mean, yeah, maybe they can use it as an out and say, oh, well, that goofy answer was generated by ChatGPT. But believe me, based on what we saw yesterday, even in the little demo that they showed, there will be tons of goofy Apple Intelligence answers around social networks when this thing launches.
Right.
There's a lot
it's
of
the nature of the beast. It's just the nature of the beast.
yeah, and there's a lot more generative stuff right out of the gate than I thought there would be. when we were reading about the rumors before this came to be.
Yeah.
Like you can make images, you can make any emoji you want. It's all there. It's all on device. It's all under the Apple umbrella. So they're taking ownership for a lot of, goofy stuff. I'm sure they built in plenty of guardrails about, hate speech and things like that. But believe me, people are going to push this thing as far as it can go to see what they can get it to do.
People are going to be pushing up against
which is great for podcast producers like me, because then I have content once this gets released.
How to keep you out of trouble. I wanted to back up for 1 second though, because you had asked me earlier what it was about the email,
the writing assistant. Yeah,
the writing assistant and how it does tone and everything. And for me, yes, that's been done before. It's cool, it's Apple, whatever. But what struck me was that it was something that was so granular and so useful on a day-to-day basis that users could finally see, oh, this is how I could really actually use Gen AI in my day-to-day work or sending emails or whatever. It was just one little tiny example. Mm-hmm. If you took a look, as Mike has just said, the bulk of everything that they rolled out yesterday covers the gamut from information sharing to learning from Siri, whatever, with context-aware Siri, to doing word processing, to all kinds of stuff. I guess I just want to say it allows Apple, by branding itself as Apple Intelligence, which, as Mike says, is absolutely brilliant, to say this is how you can use this stuff day to day. This is why you're going to want this stuff.
Okay, and to be fair, the other companies that have done AI and done these tools, I would argue they have not done a great job of explaining that or of kind of passing that along, other than, they again, I think they tend to say, hey, here are the cool things you can do, but not getting it on a personal level.
Well, I was going to say, look at what happened recently with Microsoft and this recall feature that they're rolling in. That turned out to be, at first it sounded really cool. Wow, I can check everything on my computer and figure out what that email from 10 months ago or whatever that I forgot. But then people started to think about it. It's like, wait a minute, do you really want to, have everything you've ever done on your computer stored in a place where it might be accessible? And now Microsoft, to their credit, on Friday backed away from that stuff and said it's going to be opt-in, not opt-out. So if you want it, you have to turn it on.
Yeah.
And you have to use like biometric, so that you can actually access the feature. They've done a lot of things to sort of answer some of the initial concerns. But, so you had this really cool idea that was announced by Microsoft that kind of blew up in a way, and they had to back off of it. And, that's not the way Apple rolls. At least we'll find out. But I haven't seen anything yet that says what Apple's doing right now is likely to blow up in their face. We'll see.
Well, especially since they put privacy and security top of mind, too. They came right out and said it. Look, And Apple's always done a good job of playing that privacy card, explaining that, if you do have to go to the cloud for all of this, it'll be on a private cloud owned by Apple. And they also made a big deal out of saying that a third-party company will be able to verify that nothing will leave these servers, or and that is a rarity too, because they rarely allow other companies to kind of look behind the curtain, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's called private cloud compute, and they're opening it up basically for people to just audit it and dissect it and see like just how private it is. We knew privacy would be a big part of this.
Yeah,
it's fairly impressive that these large language models and all of this stuff is going to be running on the device, and as such, the only iPhone it's going to work with right now is the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. That is a very small segment of the population.
Which I happen to have, so I'm very excited.
That's the Mingus effect. I told you.
But I want to put in a real quick pitch. We have a piece on Computer World that just went up today on Tuesday that Johnny Evans did that looks at that private cloud compute and really kind of explains the how it works and the privacy stuff that's built in and how it goes from like device to server and back and is transparent and as Michael says, auditable. So if anybody's interested in learning more about that, Johnny did a really nice job of explaining it pretty quickly.
Okay, and as Mike mentioned, these will only work initially on the i15. Is it the iPhone 15 Pro and the Pro Max, or just
Yeah,
Both of
the
the
two
two,
Pro
yeah.
phones,
And so,
as well as any iPad or Mac that has at least an M1 processor. So that goes back a little bit further.
yeah, that does
because the
expand.
M-
It
the
does
M-
expand those options. But
Yeah, the M series processors are a bit more powerful than the A series processors. So, that goes back to late 2020. The first M1 Max and iPads. I'm sorry, the first one M1 Max came out in 2020. First M1 iPads came out in 2021. Everything since then that runs an M processor, but that also means the iPad, the plain iPad, the 10th gen iPad, you can't do it. iPad Mini, you can't do it. Earlier iPad Airs, you can't do it. So there's a lot of devices that are excluded from this.
right, and Ken, you mentioned that Wall Street was pretty happy their stock had surged today, and a lot of the analysis I was reading about Wall Street being happy with it was because there was this feeling, and I don't doubt it at this point that people will see that it only works on the 15 and the 15 Pro, 15 Pro Max. I'm assuming there's going to be another phone in September that will include all of this as well.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you're going to see,
all
so
four phones released this
they're all predicting there's going to be a wave of upgrades that happen, which will make Wall Street happy because again, it's all about Apple hardware for a lot of these people. So I would expect a surge. Now, Ken, I'm assuming now. So here's the conundrum for Ken Mingus here.
Yeah.
You've got the Pro Max, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you gonna? So you'll have all of these features.
You know the answer to the question that you're building to. You know the answer. Of course, I'm going to get the new phone, and this will make someone a great second-hand phone that runs all of the Apple Intelligence.
Can you
stuff.
just send it to me, and I'll just transfer my number to your phone, or what do you do with the old ones when you
I usually sell them to a friend.
send them? Okay. Well, can I get on that list or?
We'll talk offline. I'll have my
Lottery?
people call your people. But yeah, to your point,
Yeah.
and
So do you think there's going to be a wave?
I think, huh?
Will there be a wave of upgrades at this point?
I think
because
there
of
will
this?
be. I think again, it goes back to my point. Apple was able to demonstrate to people very easily how they could get something out of Gen AI, whether it's the image stuff, which I am fascinated by and can't wait to try out, or the text stuff or the updated Siri, whatever. I think people are going to see, wow, this is like, I really kind of need to have that. This to me is much more useful and worth paying for right now than Vision Pro. In my book, for me, this is going to help me in my day-to-day life. As much as I'd like to have a Vision Pro, but I mean, this is something I think anybody can see they could use.
Yeah, Mike. So you also think there's going to be a wave?
I don't know if it'll happen like immediately.
Yeah.
It depends on how Apple sells this. It depends on how the beta goes. It's going to arrive when it arrives in September, most likely. So when it arrives in the fall, it'll be a beta, at launch because they're still building this stuff out. A lot of the features Apple said repeatedly will roll out over the course of the next year. So, 18.2, 18.3, whatever update it is. So it's not going to be like on September 26th or whatever date it is. You download iOS 18 and everything is wonderful and works. Some pieces will be there, some pieces will be buggy. Some pieces won't be there at all.
Right.
So I don't think people are going to rush out in September. Listen, they're going to sell 50 million phones regardless.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it's going to happen immediately. But I do think this is probably since like the iPhone 6, the biggest reason people will have to upgrade in a long time.
Yeah, normally whenever we do these episodes and we talk about a lot of the iOS updates and the macOS updates, I'm the anti-Mingus on this one, where I have a phone that's like this one right now is a 13, I believe. And so that's now 2 generations behind. It'll be 3 generations, by the time September rolls around. And normally whenever I get one of those iOS updates and, all of those fancy new features that they announced at the WWDC, I almost have to go back 2 to 3 years to say, all right, what features do I have on my phone now that I didn't have before? But this is the first one where once I upgrade to iOS 18 at some point, I'm going to be like, well, I'm not getting the AI, so maybe it is time for me to upgrade. And again, I'm on usually a 3-year upgrade cycle. Unlike Chris in the back, who's on his 5-year cycle with the Android OS. Are you due?
Is that the Alexander Graham Bell edition of it?
He actually has a cord on the phone.
Does it have a rotary dial on it too?
No, it's a Pixel 4a.
Okay.
So I'm about like
modern.
You're still a couple of years away from your next upgrade.
I think we're on
about like
7 now, aren't we?
I think it's going on 8.
Yeah.
I think.
Chris to be
Yeah.
on a 4A is pretty modern. Yeah.
So I do think there will be a wave. Obviously, for the people like Ken Mingus, it's just another.
I'm not a good barometer.
Yeah, you're not the right barometer, I think. But maybe me with a couple of years. I'm waiting for my Apple Care warranty to run out, and then maybe I'll think about it. Like I had a problem with the charger port, and I took it to an Apple store, and they just cleaned out the gunk, and then it was charging again. So I'm good for another year or two. But
Mike makes the point that these things are not going to roll out right away, obviously, and they'll be rolling out over the next year. But what that means is it's going to be a continuous drip of news. This new AI features finally arrived for the iPhone, and next month we're getting the image thing, and next month we're getting this. So I think it's going to be in the ether. People are going to be hearing, okay, so that's now available in the iPhone. Gosh, my phone doesn't work. Maybe I'm ready to buy. They may not buy in September, but they might buy in November, December, January, and we may see, rather than some huge spike of purchases in the fall, we may just see a nice, rise over time.
I think it'll. And again, they always time this for the holidays anyway, so you'll see, a lot of phones being bought in October, November, right, in early December.
Yeah,
I do think that people that are on the fence that's a reason to push them over.
Yeah,
I think that people who have, like you, who have a 2 to 3 year old iPhone might consider it when other years they probably wouldn't. I use my parents as a barometer for these things, and last night they both asked me, what is Apple Intelligence? Because they saw it on like their local news. what is Apple Intelligence, and like, do I want it on my phone, and can I get it on my phone? So people will pay attention.
right.
They will notice, and I think as it gets stronger and as it gets smarter, that's going to be the selling point. Not just for the iPhone. I think it's going to be the selling point for a lot of devices that Apple is going to add it to it. Right now, it's just the big 3, but within a year, maybe 18 months, Apple Watch, HomePod for sure, and Apple TV, I believe, will become like the centerpiece of the home with Apple Intelligence built into it.
This is the first time I think I've actually been super, super jazzed about generative AI. Until now, because we've been covering it now for almost 2 years, at Computer World, and you guys have been writing about it, I'm sure, at Macworld and the other pubs here. And it has always felt like, it felt like a genuinely unique technology, still searching to, for an exact use or the best way to use it. And especially with some of the stuff that came out early with all the flaws and hallucinations and things like that, I'm like, this stuff is not ready for prime time.
Yeah,
But maybe we're at the point now after a couple of years where, as Michael said, Apple swoops in a little bit later, but they do it right, and they let everything kind of gel before they, push out the whatever it is they're selling. And even this, as he says, is beta. It's not, it's still being baked.
And you'll have the people that the Apple haters out there as well, or the Apple critics who will say a lot of these things are already available on other devices, like this the photo thing where you can erase people from the background has been one of the selling points for the Google phones and the Samsung Galaxy and the
that's
Android.
on the iPhone in Google Photos. Like,
yeah,
you can get that on an iPhone just by downloading the Google Photos app.
right,
Yeah, none of it is new.
right.
But none of the people who are doing this stuff have built it in this way all together and at your fingertips. So people use Siri every day.
Right.
Once they get a phone with Apple Intelligence and they start talking to Siri, it's going to open up an entire new way of using your phone.
Yeah, let's talk about the Siri stuff. Where what did this move the needle for you in terms of your opinion of Siri, or do you feel that maybe we haven't seen it in the wild yet?
Actually, I was just going to say, after I updated my phone to iOS 18, the early beta, just to see if I could see any difference at all. And one of the first things I did was ping Siri, say, what's the temperature outside? Give me the correct temperature. I said, what's the temperature going to be tonight? with no specifics, where, whatever. It gave me the correct temperature. I said, what's the temperature in Wilmington, which is about 120 miles from here? And it gave me the correct temperature for Wilmington, North Carolina, rather than Wilmington, Delaware. And so, again, that may just be a little teeny bit of what people are going to see and how they'll use Siri, but it's better than it's been for the last 10 years right off the bat. So I think Siri is going to become a big player in all of this.
Yeah, the stuff they showed off was pretty great. That demo where the woman asked when her mom's flight was coming in and where they were going to dinner tomorrow. I mean, that's a pretty amazing stuff, assuming that all works. What that thing that you're talking about, Ken, there's a app Siri's supposed to have been able to do that since iOS 17. I've never been able to get it to work either.
No.
But the way they were talking yesterday is that this is like what they envisioned Siri to be 7 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're finally able to do it now, thanks to all of this Gen AI stuff, all of the things that they built. And, Siri has been the butt of many jokes because it gets things wrong, but so does Alexa, so does Google Assistant, so does everything. So if Apple can get this right when they ship it, I mean, it changes the way we use our phone. And again, I've said it a couple of times with an eye on Vision Pro, because that's the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's not. It's too expensive. It's too bulky. It's too limited. But all of this is being designed with that in mind, I think.
Yeah.
Well, it's the best interface. I mean, if you're trying to figure out, if let's say you've got a Vision Pro and you're trying to launch apps or close windows or whatever, and you've got to do the hand motions and the whatever, there's a learning curve to that. But if you can just tell your Vision Pro, open whatever, turn on the I want to see this video, delete that email, just
Right.
voice, and it actually works. We're heading towards Star Trek type, interfaces now.
Yeah, the most interaction I've had with Siri within the last couple of years was when I bought a new car and CarPlay was on this car. And so I now, whenever I've got that connected to my car, I'm sorry, I said car too many times. That's when I interact with Siri. I don't use Siri on my phone unless it's an accidental button push. Because normally I'm a text typer. I will type, but with CarPlay, it forces you to use Siri if you're trying to use, like, hey, find me the closest CVS, for example. That's what I had to use. I used that this morning. When it forces you to use that, then Siri's working fine. Or if I don't want to touch the phone app on my CarPlay, and I could just hit a phone button and then say, hey, call my wife or call so-and-so, and it dials that number. But it's always that, the jokes for Siri were when you were trying to find specific information or news or things like that. Like, Ken, didn't you say that before we got on the air that you had asked it who the president was, and it was like, well,
what it did, this was sort of unusual. Well, not unusual for Siri, but given where things looked like they were going, I just said, who's the current president of the United States? And it popped up, this is what I found online.
Yeah.
Sound familiar? Like 3 links. But then, like about 5 seconds later, it started reading something about the U.S. president is Joseph R. Biden Jr., blah, 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 and he's going to do this. And it cited whitehouse.gov. I said, okay, who was the previous president? And then it gave me 3 more links, including one to John Tyler in 1850. So, it's got a lot.
That's not wrong.
No, it's not. He wasn't.
he was a previous president, not, so it didn't understand the word the. But again, we've suffered through this with Amazon, and I don't understand what Amazon is doing, because they want to charge for this, GPT integration. It just, I don't understand. Like, they've got so many devices out there as well. It feels like that market is just waiting for someone that will give them the correct answer every time. So maybe, Apple isn't actually late to the game with Siri here, given how slow Amazon and even Google has been on this personal assistant front.
Yeah, I don't think they're late to the game with Siri.
Yeah.
But imagine this was WWDC 2021, and Apple unveiled this very thing, because I'm sure they've been working on it for a lot longer than the last 6 months. But listen, Apple doesn't push things out until it's ready. I think Apple Intelligence is probably out a year too early. and they wanted to hold it to next year, but they couldn't because
There was too much
their
pressure
stock-
on them from investors,
yeah,
right?
From
Or-
investors, their stock was getting hammered. Nvidia's soaring, Microsoft soaring. Like AI is the thing, and they
Yeah.
have to. If there's one thing Tim Cook understands, it's the business side of things, and he, I think smartly got it out the door. Is it 100% ready? No, but to show their cards.
Yeah,
is
and
pretty
they didn't,
important
and I
right
don't
now.
think they showed all their cards either. I think they've got some cards
Yep.
that are still
I
in their
agree.
hand, and they might not announce those until maybe September when they come out with a phone, and they'll say, "Oh, by the way, here's some 18 other things you can do."
Right. And the other devices, again, HomePod,
Right.
Apple TV being the one in the center of the home that they're conspicuously absent from all of this stuff. And maybe it's because the processor in the current models can't do it, but it's absolutely imperative that HomePod and tvOS gets on board with Apple Intelligence sooner than later.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point, Mike, that Apple really did probably feel that its hands were forced this year to
Little bit,
put something out there. And the obvious, the evidence of that is the fact that this is still beta. All these features are not available now. I mean, Apple likes to present pretty much a finished product generally when it rolls out something new. And this is like, okay, here's what we can give you now. Here's what's coming a few months down the road.
Right.
And then stay tuned for next year because, like you said, it would have been better in 25 than 24, but hey, that's the market.
So
Yep.
we haven't touched on this yet, but because again, we usually appeal to a more business oriented audience on our side of things. But this whole Genmoji thing, where you can generate an emoji, and see, I knew you were going to roll your eyes, and so that's what I'm going to draw. My first emoji is going to be show me a bearded gentleman rolling his eyes, and I'm going to use that as my custom Ken Mingus emoji. And I know that Google already has this.
Please
I think
do that, Keith, and send it to me, and I will adopt it on my social media sites as me. as
yeah,
creative.
but I'll have to upgrade my phone in order to do this. This
there
again,
you
this
go.
this might
Direct
not
it
be
out.
designed for guys like me. I'm in my 50s, and but everybody that I finally started getting the stickers, by the way. Because again, all three of my kids have iPhones, and so they love the stickers part. Any photo that looks kind of funny, they do the outline of it and they create a sticker for it, and we have to remind our kids not to weaponize the photos that we use, because otherwise you just get this long thread of stickers that people are sending to each other in our family group chat. So the Genmoji thing might appeal to them. The only thing I saw was that it took it looked like it took a while to create the Genmoji where you have to type in what you're looking for. I think there's a voice component to it. And again, I start thinking of the safety and the guardrails. Obviously, you don't want to start, there will be people, you're going to see a lot of crazy ass emojis, but is that appealing to a younger audience that will use it and tell the rest of us how to use it? In the future.
For sure. Yeah. Not every feature is for every person.
Right.
Right.
I think that the image generation stuff with DALL-E and other engines, that's what really grabbed people's attention when this thing started taking off last year, the Gen AI stuff. So that's what people are going to see. Listen, the images they showed in the keynote were fine. But when you type in a couple of words and it spits out 4 or 5 images, and I meant that to be a sketch. Oh no, I want that to be animated. I mean, it's pretty incredible that it can do this stuff. It's also, if you're an artist or a writer, a little frightening that our phones are now able to basically do these things that would take us hours in seconds. And there's a whole generation, my son being part of it, that is going to be trained on AI, on doing this
prompt
stuff.
generation.
We've already kind of forgotten the idea of libraries and reading and books and research. And now, like small assignments, like little things that you would have to spend some time on. And listen, forget about the whole job thing. when you sit down and do something and figure out something, whether it's a math problem or a word problem or a book report, you learn while you're doing that. By telling an AI system to generate something and then reading it, editing it, and saying, yeah, this is good, you're not learning anything. You're just getting it done. So there's a frightening notion to all of this gen stuff that, we're kind of like stifling our own creativity, which is somewhat ironic that Apple just had that iPad Pro flap.
Right, with that commercial.
That Crush ad where we're showing, like, here's all the things that your iPad can do. Now it's saying, like, we don't even need that. Just type in, make a song with a trumpet and a violin, and, we could do that. So it's an exciting time. Apple Intelligence is certainly exciting, and I look forward to using it. But there's a part of me that says, man, we are getting closer and closer to making, like, the human being somewhat irrelevant.
Well, do you let's talk about the music thing for a second. And they did not announce anything with music.
They did not.
Let's go down the hypothetical road.
You know it's coming, though. You know it's coming.
Yeah, right. It's all part of the same coin. Yeah.
Right. So they've got GarageBand, and a lot of musicians use that to help generate their own songs, or not generate, but create. There's
no generative function in GarageBand,
right.
But as Ken said, that's
one of the obvious next steps. If it does come, does Apple use it to say, hey, we can help you with your creation to make faster?
I mean, why wouldn't they?
Right.
I mean, if they're doing it with writing and images, and it's also a component of Xcode for coding, like, why not? What's to stop them from putting it into GarageBand?
Can you imagine being a musician?
Yeah.
And you compose a song, you've got all the different instruments or whatever. Maybe it's a country western tune, I don't know. And then you can say to GarageBand or Siri or whatever, okay, redo this as a jazz beat, and it generates that song that you've created, but it's a completely different variation that might have taken you who knows how long to come up with on your own. So in some ways, Mike, you're absolutely right. We run the risk of dumbing ourselves down, but it also opens a lot of doors for potential different kinds of creativity, at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can't draw. So
neither can I.
The image generation stuff is incredible. Great. Yeah, right. But there are people who can.
Yeah. I watched my son, for example, use some of this generative image creation. There was, and he's used it to put, like, he designs T-shirts for his marching band, and he's done button things where he starts with that idea on generative AI and gets something, and he wouldn't have been able to do that with the old methods of, he would have either had to try to draw it himself or get a friend who could draw, and that process takes so long and then costs money. He might not have gotten to that final product point, which is, a funny something that was, created by AI, but it's still funny. Like, our mascot is, it's called the Woolly, which is a sheep. And so he had something where a sheep was rolling dice for a musical they were doing for Guys and Dolls. And, that was cooler than if he had gone or tried to hire someone, and the process would have been drawn out and we wouldn't have done it. So I do see that as, again, using AI as a starting point, maybe and then getting other people who can't draw or can't write. And I think we didn't mention this, Ken, but you were talking about, you and I, we're writers, so we don't necessarily feel that might be useful. But there's a billion people out there who say, yeah, I'm a horrible writer, and it would benefit them to get some of these. I've read a lot of emails from people that are, could use the help.
They could use that professional button to clean up those emails before they send them out. I agree. All
right, so let's get to some of the other announcements, because it wasn't just about Apple Intelligence and AI and all of this stuff. There were other announcements for the other systems for iOS and Vision OS for the Vision Pro and some other things. Was there anything else that stood out to you from these other announcements? Or I could just start listing off bullet points. Ken? I mean, the
coolest thing I saw yesterday was even cooler than Apple Intelligence, if you ask me, was that iPhone mirroring feature for Mac OS 15 Sequoia.
Okay.
So
Can you explain how I'm going to use that, or what? Because I saw that and go, why would I want to use my phone on my Mac? But there's a reason, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the obvious reason is if, like, and this happens, your phone is in 3 rooms over, and you get a notification, or you need to do something on the phone. There are things that the phone can do that the Mac can't, and rather than getting up, walking 3 rooms over, picking it up, bringing it back, sitting down, you can just click a button, bring up your phone's home screen, and just interact with it as if it was in your hand. So you can open apps, you can read whatever you need to do, whatever notification you needed to respond to. All that stuff can happen right on your Mac. Is it something that you're going to use every day? Probably not. But it's one of those like magical little Apple things that makes that tight ecosystem just that much more wonderful.
It ties you in.
Yeah.
I agree. Keith, I was actually sort of pleased to see the Vision OS updates. They talked about a lot of the apps that have created. I mean, obviously there are lots that are compatible, but I mean, these are, the number of apps, was it like more than 2,000, I think, that are specifically done for Vision OS now? And some of the things they're talking about, being able to create spatial photos from 2D photos. And, and what was it? There was they're talking about a larger field of view, extra wide display or something that's coming.
For the Mac Virtual Display is like twice as
so
big.
they're going to make an ultra wide display to have it wrap around like you've got 2 4K monitors.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, can you imagine sitting watching a movie like that? I mean, talk about getting immersive. I mean, that's the sort of thing that makes me want a Vision Pro, but I just, right now, it's still pretty expensive.
We're getting closer, Ken. You're getting closer to getting one.
Not quite, but they showed off some really nice stuff at the event.
The expansion of Apple Immersive Video to third party, it's going to require some hefty hardware, based on what they were talking about. But that's an Apple thing right now, and they haven't made very many of them, like maybe 2 since Vision Pro launched. That's the thing that you want to do in Vision Pro. When I had the demo at the Apple Store, at the very end, they throw in a couple of those Apple immersive experiences, and that's the thing that makes you go like, "Wow!"
Yeah.
Like you're looking
You
around.
can't do it on any other device.
Yeah.
That's the one thing.
And it's like ridiculously clear quality. It's like you're in the room. There's no. It's incredible. So, if more companies can produce that kind of content, and if Apple can also roll out more of that, that's going to make Vision Pro a little bit more attractive as well.
Yeah. Was the train support, or what was it called, travel mode? Was that?
I got to tell you, I don't quite understand what that is. I don't know what.
I was going to ask you, Mike, if you talked
to a train and a plane is.
Yeah, if you had talked to Jason Cross, who reviewed the device, if he still had it.
Yeah.
Does he still have it, or
he does? He hasn't installed the beta, as far as I know, yet.
I think when we were talking on that episode, he had mentioned that they did, there was, if you're sitting on the train using it, as soon as the train moves, your screen goes away because it was pinned to that specific location. It doesn't move with you. And I'm wondering if that's travel mode, or if it's just something, I read somewhere else that it helps prevent motion sickness. So
it says with Apple's website says with train support and travel mode, you can now work privately using multiple apps during your long commute, or catch up on your favorite shows on a massive screen while immersed in a serene environment. I guess, but they talked about using it on an airplane. How is that any different?
Where would that? I mean, so you have it. You're sitting there and you're watching a movie. You can watch whatever movie you want while you're sitting on the plane, right?
Yeah, well, you always could do that.
Trains and planes still go in a horizontal direction, right?
I guess trains are different because you're closest to the ground. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I can't answer that, but it is a thing.
Yeah.
You can use it on a train now. I guess you couldn't before.
And
First, step 1, get on a train. Step 2.
Yeah, right. But on the other hand, that's a step in a different direction for them, where they're encouraging the use of it outside, whereas before.
Right.
Like a plane is a different thing. Like you're on that thing for 3-4 hours. A train could be a short trip. So that's more of like a commuting situation. So it's a little bit different as far as the use case goes. I don't know what the practical benefits are, but the use case of using a Vision Pro on a train or a subway or something like that is different than an airplane. Different type of travel.
Yeah, I'm wondering how many people have actually used their device on the train yet. Because it does.
I mean, apparently nobody, because he couldn't until yesterday. I don't know.
I want to fire off a question to Michael to see if he heard anything about iPad OS that changes his view that the hardware is great and the operating.
No, I mean the calculator stuff is cool.
Yeah.
but no.
It's a calculator. I mean,
No, it's more than
the
that. All
handwriting
that
stuff
yeah,
and being able
right, the
that was
Apple Pencil
cool.
stuff, and that's all very cool.
Yes.
But,
Is that going to?
it's
So
not
the
this-
first thing I thought of when I saw that was, is it going to encourage cheating now in my algebra class or my kids' algebra class, where you can just write out the equation and then say,
Yeah.
"Hey, could you solve this for me?"
I mean, sure, yeah.
I mean, I guess
I
you
mean,
could do that.
it's-
You could do that with a search engine and a
You
computer.
could do that with right, but this is even different because if you have a test and the teacher writes out a question, you could write out that question on your iPad
Yeah.
and it'll solve it. It'll solve it for you.
Just remember to put the equal sign. Ding.
I mean, it's pretty neat. Again, it's not good. Is it going to go send me out to buy an iPad and Apple Pencil? Probably not. But if I had one, I'd be excited to try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the Passwords app, where they're now? It looks like they're integrating all of these different password applications across different use cases and putting it into the keychain.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. It sounds like if you
Yeah,
had one of these
it's-
other accounts, you don't have to then switch over. You could just integrate it in, right?
Yeah, it's like 1Password or Dashlane or something like that. I'm sure it's not as full featured as those, but it'll take the password little tab out of settings, put it on
Well,
your
it's
desktop
buried.
or your
It's really
home
buried.
screen.
You can't
Yeah,
find
it's quite buried.
Yeah.
And they're going to have, one-time passwords and pass keys and your passwords and probably secure notes and things. And it's just like a little simple password manager app. That's fine. I mean, like Ken said, it's hard to find. I'm sure most people don't even know it's there.
Yeah.
Like they use their keychain, but they don't know how to get to their passwords.
And half the time, I think I'm still writing them down. I've got them in a file.
Like with pen and paper, writing them down.
Well, on a Post-it note every now and then,
Sticky
just for a
notes. Stick
specific
sticky note on your screen.
a
so we
sticky
can
note
all-
on the screen for a specific account. But then I do keep it in a Google file. I'm horrible with security, Mike. Just come on over and hack me, and you can have everything. But again, like with my corporate email, I'm constantly having to type in the password. It doesn't remember it for me at all. That's their corporate security policy. So I'm not sure exactly how much that's going to help. I'm always, even on websites that I don't go to
You
for
can
a
still
while.
save. You can save
Yeah.
your corporate passwords in a password manager because that's local.
Right, but that's that extra step.
It's-
It's almost like I'd rather just have. And
But
again,
that is
it's the
that-
lazy.
that is this.
It's the
that's
laziness
step,
on
though.
my half that I don't want to go out and get another app. I'm
He
just
just
be
wants
like,
to write it on a sticky note.
I
Michael.
just want my
But how
OS
is
to-
that? How is that less labor intensive than typing it into a password manager? You got to find a pen. You got to find paper. You
I've got
gotta
to
write it
set
down,
up
you
an
gotta
account
stick
for the password manager, and then I might have to pay for it. I don't know.
Well, now you won't. Now you won't have to. It'll be right on your iPhone.
All right, so
Actually, it's coming to Windows also. So it's cross-platform, which is there's
Smart.
what three apps that are TV, music, and iCloud currently are on Windows. So this is the fourth passwords app will be also on Windows.
all right. Any final thoughts on what was announced? Whether it's the AI stuff or, I mean, obviously that's the biggest part of that keynote yesterday. Any other final thoughts, Ken?
I actually, this has nothing to do with the content, but I really like the opening when they're jumping out of the plane. I thought that was really well done. It caught my eye.
I'm trying to get. If I became emperor of the universe, guys, I'm telling Apple, stop with the goofy sketches.
I know.
But it's me.
I like
It's me. I would actually like to go back to a live event where you just felt that things were more exciting with live events, and I understand why Apple continues to want to do the whole
they
video.
couldn't begin to demonstrate all of this stuff in a live event, though. Yesterday's event was so packed, and I think it lasted about an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah,
It was.
but it's all pre-made
it was
video.
almost 2.
Yeah,
It was
It was
almost
it was
but
close to
not
2
even-
hours.
It felt to me like longer than 2 hours, but it just
It was a lot. There was a lot there. One quick comment I have is the intense customization that they added to iOS. I'm not 100% sure if I'm on board with all of that. the
I
tinting
played
of
around with it.
of
I
the
don't know what
icons.
the advantage is. Yeah.
There's a lot in Control Center. You can do a lot there now. I like that you can put your icons anywhere. That's way overdue. But the colored stuff, the dark mode stuff, the tinting stuff, I don't know how I feel about it. Like why? Like why? I'm working on a piece now. Steve Jobs, way back, like way before even the iPhone said, hold on, I got the quote here. People don't know what you want until you show it to them.
Okay.
That's why I never rely on market research. Our task is to read things that are not yet on the page. I gotta say, he would never have been on board with that color slider and changing icon. Like it takes away the personality of both the phone and the apps and the home screen. I don't understand the point of it. I don't know why they did it.
Why would you want all yellow apps that all
Right.
look the same?
That's precisely my point. Like why?
Yeah.
Like who's asking for that? And even if they aren't asking for that, who's going to look at that and say, "Oh, yeah, you know what? I did want all my icons to be blue today." Like it just doesn't seem. It seems silly.
There must be a
I don't know.
subsegment of Apple users, and is it the high end
guess.
users that do all this stuff all the time, or I don't know, because like there are when I finally got something on the home screen of a photo, and I finally figured that out. But remember the feature where you can call someone and their picture would show up or their emoji would show up or whatever, and I just don't have the time to go do that for every one of my contacts. Not that I have a billion contacts, but it's like, look, just tell me the name. Just be happy that I've got a name, and and it is nice when I get when Scam Likely calls me. I'm always excited to hear from Scam.
I'm right with I'm totally agree with Michael. Like I say, I toyed with it briefly after I had installed iOS 18.
Yeah.
And I immediately went back to what I had before because it didn't add anything. And it felt like one of those things that Apple included because it could do it. But, what's the use case?
Yeah, and it feels like, again, you're making another learning curve for people. I don't want to spend, even if it's a quick thing, I don't want to spend a lot of time customizing my phone. But
Agreed.
But maybe there are people that want to do that. I mean, I'm
feel
sure
like
that
if it
there's a segment
was, like 5 or 6 years ago, people would have been like, "Oh, this is cool," but like, not anymore.
Teenage girls that love the color pink.
Maybe it's a generational thing, and I just don't get it.
Yeah,
But also, like, if everything's the same color, how do you know where anything is?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's when you push a button and you ask Siri to open up
I guess.
the crossword puzzle game. All right, guys. Again, thanks again for your initial thoughts. We'll reconnect in September, I'm sure, when we get new hardware and see these apps in the wild. So again, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
All right, that's all the time. That's all the time we have for today's episode. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, add any thoughts you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.